everyone, and welcome back to Data Break by 55, the podcast where we break down the complexities of today's global marketing industry. I'm your host, Nancy Edwards, marketing lead here at 55, and your go-to wrangler for expert insights on marketing and data analytics from around the globe. Each month, we invite experts in the MarTech space to join us for a deep dive into the technical solutions that are shaping the future of businesses and marketers. From advanced measurement to generative AI, our podcast covers the latest insights and trends in the marketing industry. So sit back, relax, and take a break with us as we dive in. I'm excited to introduce our guest for today's episode titled Gen AI at Scale, What's Stopping Brands from Going All In? We've got Alistair Vine, Senior VP at Oliver, the world's first and only company to design bespoke in-house agencies and ecosystems for brands, and a returning guest from 55, Christy Ray Harrison, who is an executive director that helps 55's global and US clients bridge the gap between marketing, technology, and data. Both Oliver and 55 are sister companies within the BrandTech Group, which has been bringing leading global AI and technology companies together for more than a decade. But before we jump in, Alistair, I'd love to hear a bit more about your background and your work at Oliver.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm the Senior Vice President at Oliver. I've been with Oliver sort of on and off now since 2011, which has been amazing to see this growth that we've gone through from sort of 50 people in London to now being 5,000 people in 40 countries across the globe. I look after all things new business and solution design in North America. And part of my job now is helping clients design new solutions and embed Gen AI in their in-house ecosystems. So we've got a lot of stories and stuff to talk about today. But yeah, it's wonderful to be here.
Perfect. And Christy Ray, excited to have you back on the podcast. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about who you are and what you do for any listeners who might be new?
Yeah, glad to be back. Thanks for having me. I am a director on the 55 team. 55 was founded in Paris 13 or 14 years ago and got its start in web analytics, tracking, and data privacy. And now we've been growing our US presence over the last 6 or 7 years. So I've been with 55, part of the BrandTech Group, for 4 years now, and am based alongside Alistair and the Oliver team in the New York office. My day-to-day, I primarily focus on some of our luxury goods and CPG clients. And currently with 2025 being the year of AI at scale, I'm hyper-focused on helping those clients maximize the value of AI, experiment with it, roll it out, and see results from it. And that's a big focus for our team across the board this year. But then within the BrandTech Group, 55 kind of serves as that data solutions provider and helps ensure that our clients have the right data foundations to actually realize the potential of AI. So that's me.
I'm really, truly thrilled to have both of you on. I know this is going to be a strong conversation. A year ago, we had Christy Ray talking about how Gen AI was entering the scene and what that means for marketers. But now we're seeing adoption in strategy, media, analytics, and all kinds of use cases. It is not surprising that Gen AI continues to be marketing's favorite buzzword, and plenty of brands have tested it. But how many are really scaling it? Alistair, I know at Oliver you work with all types of clients around the world to in-house creative production and marketing strategy. Curious to get your opinion on the evolution of generative AI, how you're seeing this play out on the client side, and what it takes to get clients out of pilot purgatory, as you so cleverly put it when we were preparing for this episode.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting because over the last year, we're going through the adoption curve, right? And there were early adopters and now we're sort of into mainstream adopters. And as brands are starting to roll this out, I think we're seeing a couple of different things that happen. So when we're working with brands to deploy this, there are people who are really comfortable using the tools, using the platforms, using the models or whatever it is, and identifying use cases and experimenting and then trying to scale that out. But bringing those like later adopters, the mainstream or even the laggards into that, there's like a tension. And I think there's so much about people's culture, approach, appetite to use new things, appetite to learn that gets in the way of what you think might be an amazing use case. I mean, we're deploying Gen AI in like every single part of our business, whether that's in briefing or in content creation or in approvals and QA or any of those things. But even then, we're still having to bring people with us. We're still having to bring clients with us, which I think is super interesting. There's like a culture part to it, and then there's a readiness part to it as well. And I'm sure Christy Ray sees this from the data side of things more than anything. We live in a world where people have built so many different data sources and things that exist in different pockets that are either structured or unstructured. Today, when we start trying to deploy things at scale, it's like building a skyscraper, right? If we're an inch out at the bottom, we're going to be a mile out at the top. And I think that there's a lot of hesitation in some big brands because they want to fix those foundations before they try and deliver it at scale. But I'm super interested to have this conversation as well, because some of the things I'm talking to people about now is, do you need to fix those foundations in order to be able to deploy something at scale? Or can we use Gen AI to actually create some interoperability and take a lack of structure and turn it into something a bit more usable and meaningful? So there's a people thing, and then there's also hesitation around being structured. But we're also seeing real life adoption at scale, and we can talk about some of those use cases and some of the things that we've built as well.
I definitely feel like we've seen on the 55 side the value that AI can bring in finding patterns and helping bring structure to something that's maybe unstructured, or seeing things in a way that maybe we've missed. I'd love to hear, Christy Ray, your take on that. What do you feel like is maybe holding brands back from full integration? And how do you think Gen AI can really help empower the movement forward?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It reminds me of questions we've heard throughout the digital business transformation era, and that's sort of evolved as technology has evolved. Like, what does digital business transformation mean in 2025? Well, that's going to mean a lot of AI driven transformation, and maybe even using AI to get your foundations right in order to reap the benefits of further AI use cases. But I think for us at 55, it's been interesting to watch clients embrace that the newer era of digital business transformation, and not just being data driven, but also AI driven and harnessing that potential. As Alistair was alluding to, the bigger barrier that we see is around like talent and training and of course the technology. Those are kind of the three T's that we talk about at the Brand Tech Group. The talent and the training are critical to anything being successful. We were reading through a recent eMarketer kind of HubSpot annual state of marketing survey, and they surveyed marketers, and 54% of them said that they feel overwhelmed by the prospect of incorporating AI into their marketing workflows. And then at the same time, 62% of those same marketers said that generative AI is supposed to be more of their focus this year. So how do you reconcile that, where they're feeling overwhelmed, but they know this is supposed to be a focus, something they're supposed to be getting impact from for their businesses? Something has to change. And for us, we think about that change in terms of training and hiring the right people, but also upskilling them and moving from knowing that AI is important to actually doing something about it and using it in real use cases. And then on the other hand, if you have the talent, but you have the training, they know how the models are working and how they're supposed to be integrating them into their day-to-day kind of marketing workflows. You can't really do any of that without the right governance and kind of data foundations in place. So that's where you have the tech and the data, which for us, that's all fused together, because if your tech stack isn't set up to ensure your data is collected, transformed, activated, measured in the right way, then it's going to be really hard to rely on any kind of new AI tools and solutions that you plug into that stack, or to get true impact and results out of it. With a lot of our clients who are starting to experiment with new AI solutions, we start with that data foundation. We do a kind of comprehensive audit of what does the tech stack look like? Where is your data flowing from? How's it being collected? Where is it all being stored? What's the cleanliness and the quality and the credibility of this data? And then what's the rate success framework or measurement framework to have in place as you embed and integrate new AI tools and technologies into these workflows with that data?
It's super interesting, that stat you gave from eMarketer about people feeling anxious but being told to focus on it at the same time, because that's like, okay, make me address the big scary thing in the room. When you talk about doing that holistic audit of the tech stack and the workflows and how the data moves around the system, a lot of that anxiety comes from the fact that a lot of enterprise businesses have so many different owners of so many different parts of the marketing workflow. Do you think that it's maybe because some of those organizations lack that cohesive view of their marketing workflows and the way that data moves around their business. Is that something that you're seeing when you go in and do those audits?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big reasons we do these audits is that many of our clients have never done that kind of comprehensive audit to get the cohesive view that you're talking about, where they actually have documented the repository of what are all my data sources, who's the owner of each one of those, how frequently is it updated, where is it sitting today, who has access to it. Of course, they've probably gone through different iterations of warehousing their data or setting up the right cloud tools or a customer data platform for first party data, things like that. But having a comprehensive view of where first, second, third party, structured and unstructured, where all of that lives today and who owns it, that's something that a lot of clients only have in pieces, or each team or business unit might have their own version of it. But the comprehensive view is something that can often be lacking, especially with a lot of CPG brands where they have a whole portfolio of brands and regions and business units, and it can be difficult to get that comprehensive view, but it's a core part of that discovery process to set up the right data foundation so you can plug in AI tools and actually use them with any sort of confidence. Even an assessment of a company's maturity when it comes to their tech stack and their data and their readiness or appetite for integrating AI into their workflows is going to depend a lot on whether that view of their data and their tech stack exists at a comprehensive level. A lot of that is going to dictate readiness for integrating AI.
I love that idea of readiness and appetite, because I think one of the things that we uncover when we go into new client engagements is that sometimes there can be quite a big gap between the appetite, which is, hey, we want the real shiny, amazing thing, but then the readiness to actually adopt it. When we go into a new engagement, we do something quite similar, but from the creative side of things, around doing the discovery and the assessment of how does work move through the system? What are the processes? What are the talent and people that you need? What are the technologies that you need? Because some clients have like massive appetites, but you look under the system, and again, it's not to be disparaging, but like legacy systems have been built. Different departments use different workflow tools. Different brands have different briefing templates and forms. I see this a lot in like CPG companies because a lot of them grow through like acquisition of brands, right? They've bolted things on, they've got different cultures that sit within different brands. And so building a unified way of working, there's so much benefit to it from a career path point of view for people. And building a unified view of that from a data point of view is also super powerful.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see the difference between the appetite and the readiness of clients, helping meet our clients where they're at. That's where we like to play. That's where we thrive, is coming in and assessing appetite, readiness, and everything that kind of covers, and then bringing along the right training to play in that space and to help clients wherever they are on that maturity curve.
It's super interesting you mentioned that maturity curve, because I was reading something the other day, I think it was in a Gartner report. They said something like marketers are only using 33% of their tech stack capabilities today. So that goes back to your training point, Christy Ray, right? Even in an organization that's mature, that has the tech stack, it's the people in the training to make sure they're utilizing the full stack, maximizing that investment.
Yeah, totally. I think there's often like a deeper level of training that's needed before that appetite and desire can really turn into true readiness. Can you help the early adopters in an organization become those champions and advocates who can train the kind of middle and later adopters? That's something I've seen to be pretty effective, because the most effective form of training is really that train the trainer mentality, and getting your champions and stakeholders on board early on and helping them see the impact of something, and then also helping them see how they can grow and optimize the use of a new technology or a new AI solution in that organization over time. We've been talking a lot about the analogy of AI as electricity lately, and thinking about how ready an organization needs to be before you could start plugging in different tools to that current of electricity, because it can be this crazy source of power and business results, but it could also be a total disaster if those guardrails are not in place.
That's such a good point, Christy Ray. Having champions and stakeholders early on in really fostering change management with innovative tools like AI and new technology is critical. One way I'm seeing brands create this appetite and excitement for AI and building confidence amongst teams is implementing internal use cases first. Are there some internal ways that you're seeing companies utilize AI technology that's having an impact on productivity or helping to build some of these bridges and inspire that advocacy for this transformation across different teams within these bigger organizations?
I can jump in there. Within Oliver, we talk a lot about an initiative internally that we're going through, which is called Total Lifecycle Compression, TLC. Within that, looking at different opportunities and moments within the cycle of how we make work, where we can compress that time down, either for us or for our clients, right? There's a company out there that every year surveys marketers and agencies. And basically they asking marketers, like, do you think you're really good at writing briefs? And all the marketers say, yes, we're really good at writing briefs. 80% of marketers think that they write good briefs. Only 10% of agencies agree with that. So there is a gap. One of the things that we're doing that I think is super interesting is we built this tool that's called Slipstream, our AI enhanced briefing initiative. What we've done with Slipstream is we said, okay, well, how can we simplify that briefing process and enhance the quality of it? Writing a good brief takes time. If it takes an hour to fill in a really good brief, and a really good brief looks like, objective, audience, key messages, whatever the things sit in that, how can we compress that down? And so within Slipstream, we're able to take unstructured data. So even sort of voice to text that a marketer can just say, I want a campaign that's going to showcase cookies at Christmas, right? And this is my audience, this is my budget, and this is when I need to go live. And they can put it in, or they can attach a deck that they've done or something. And the AI within Slipstream will analyze the brief for completeness against key things that client has said need to be in every brief within their organization. And then what it'll do is it'll take that unstructured input, it will restructure it, and it'll spit out on the next page that brief with all the right headlines. And we can even go into the objectives and enrich them and say, hey, is this a smart objective? Is it measurable? Is it timely? We can extrapolate, is there a DEI angle in here? Are we making sure that we're being inclusive to the different audiences? Is there a sustainability thing that we could do? We're even starting to build in things like creative thought starters. So the blank page syndrome for once we've received that brief is kind of taken away. For internal use cases, I personally think that's a really powerful one. And we're seeing some clients who used to take an hour to write a brief, we're now able to get to something that's okay, good, in like 5 minutes, and then spend 10 minutes making it great. And if you can close that 70% perception gap between the client and the agency in the quality, while also reducing the time taken by like 75% for the client to write the brief, that's a pretty strong use case.
Absolutely. Earlier, Christy Ray mentioned the 3 T's that we like to use at the Brand Tech Group: talent, technology, and training. But I feel like there's almost a 4th, which could be trust. Being able to use a tool internally like Slipstream allows teams to get comfortable working with AI, collaborating together, and I think too understanding how AI tools maybe just even work. So that when you're ready to bring in an external tool or to take a use case externally, there's already a lot more trust in the tool, but also in your team and your processes. Are there other ways that you're seeing brands, or maybe even in your own respective roles, are you finding ways to build trust when you're working to scale these AI use cases or other transformational technologies?
Yeah, I do think trust is kind of the undercurrent across all 3 of those other areas of talent and training and the tech or the data. And especially when we're thinking about not just an internal organization and teams' relationships with each other, but the business's relationship to its consumers. That's one of the scarier things for marketers to think about, is how will using this new AI solution or integrating this into my marketing workflow impact my brand's relationship with my consumers. That's such a precious thing that you don't want to cause undue friction in. If anything, you want these AI workflows to be something that ultimately causes greater and deeper relationships with the consumers and more meaningful interactions, and not something that's going to turn them off or cause a greater divide between brand and consumer, or speak to them in ways that they're not ready to be spoken to yet. That goes back to governance and how important it is to make sure your organization is set up so that you're making AI work for you, and then it's not running your train off the rails into a direction that you never really anticipated.
It's a really interesting concept because I think if you want to go to deploy something at scale, you have to build trust that the system you're building in a world where you're dealing with huge data. If you can query in natural language, what's the one thing I should do with my business today? That's really powerful, but you have to be able to trust the output. You have to trust that it's not a hallucination.
Yeah, that's a big reason why we do data assessments and audits in the early stages of integrating any new solution. My trust is going to be entirely dependent on the credibility and the quality of the data. We use the garbage in, garbage out analogy a lot, but it's true. It's really so dependent on whether you know the data is comprehensive and clean. Often for our teams internally and even working with our clients, trust is built by taking small steps in the direction you want to go in and setting up the right measurement framework so you can see the results, making sure you can actually measure, like what Alistair was talking about with efficiency gains or the time being reduced or the quality being improved of a brief that gets created. For us, we're working more with like large data sets and trying to be able to query them in natural language and ask for month over month results of this metric or that metric or how this KPI changed over time, experimenting, piloting, proof of concepts, MVPs, all of the buzzwords, but those have a purpose, right? It's about iterating and improving and building the trust so that more and more of your team members and business units can get on board and be comfortable with the direction that AI is being used in. We try to make sure any new workflow actually streamlines things and makes things more efficient rather than weighing down the decision process.
Right. One of the challenges that we face in the creative side of things is around making sure that we don't get bogged down because we're suddenly in a world where you can create anything. One of the things that another brand tech company, Pencil, has built into their platform is a predictive model because while they're generating creative across all of the different models, and that's a divergent process that you can get like slowed down in, you should also be able to then narrow in and focus on what's actually going to perform. The predictive engine inside Pencil is really powerful to avoid creating that inefficiency that might happen by just layering like, just going to do another Gen AI thing. I'm just going to hit generate again and again and again and again. You get to a point where you're like, no, I'm going to hit generate. Is it going to work? If it's going to work and predict it to work, great. I can go and use that now, right? I have a backstop to avoid inefficiency. I know that they ran a study in Ad Age last year, and they're seeing sort of a 40% uplift in content that's created by Pencil because they've got that predictive engine and they can get it live. They're also making stuff 62% faster and 55% cheaper, which, that's like pretty impressive stats on productivity improvements.
Nice, Alistair. I love that you mentioned Pencil. As part of the Brand Tech Group, our team has been able to get inside the Pencil AI tool and play around with some of the features that you were mentioning, like the content generation. I was definitely impressed by the predictive engine as well. I think, again, a lot of times we forget, or at least I forget, how AI really can be used in so many different areas. It's not just content, as we've discussed. It's data, it's being able to make decisions, identifying patterns, creating more efficient processes. I saw an article the other day talking about how Gen AI is shaping SEO and changing up entirely how we think about building web pages or any kind of content because people are going to ChatGPT versus searching in a traditional search engine. What are your thoughts on that? Is this something that you've seen across your clients or maybe even in your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, look, in my personal life, use ChatGPT all the time. I'm sure there's a meme around this somewhere where it's like people who've got like hundreds of tabs open on their web browsers. And I'm like, if you can be the sort of person who lives with the anxiety that 150 tabs give you, that's great. But if you were previously doing research, that's what you had to do in a browser, right? You go to your preferred search engine, you click on the links, and then you have to go in and you have to parse through all of the information that you're searching for on that specific topic. My wife and I were doing a bit of a thought experiment the other day and getting excited about the idea of, could we buy an apartment in Madrid? So I went into ChatGPT and I searched, what is the process for buying a home in Spain? What are the tax implications? What are the amounts you need to put down? What are the mortgage rates? And it goes and it does like 5 minutes of deep research. And it returns to me something that I'd have to do like probably 20 or 30 different searches in a search engine to even get to the point where I had articles in an attention economy and being an MTV generation kid. Like, that ain't happening. But it was able to do deep research and then compile all of this for me. And in doing that, what it also did was it gave me advice on which banks in Spain were more likely to offer preferential rates to foreigners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's wild.
Like, that's crazy, isn't it? So within 10 minutes, I had a plan on how much I would need to afford and which bank I could go to and sort out a mortgage for a vacation rental. It's a thought experiment. We're not actually doing that. But if I'm a brand, if I'm one of those Spanish banks, I want to make sure that I am being represented, being returned as being like having a good rate, having a good customer service. Because what I'm next going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, which bank is it easier to get that from or has a better approval rating or whatever? And some of that data might not be available, but the model is going to return like a list of brands, right? And if you are not at the top of that list, if you're, you know, they used to say that the best place to hide a dead body was on the second page of a Google search, right? So like what happens in the future when everybody's using ChatGPT effectively as their search engine and you're not being mentioned 90% of the time in your category for your brand attributes? Like, what does that mean for your organization?
That's an area that actually a lot of our clients have been asking us about just in the last couple months is like, can you tell us about all of the traffic that's coming to our website from LLMs and from ChatGPT and Gemini and all of the other tools that consumers are now using and being kind of funneled towards various brands and sites. So that's a topic that I think is going to continue to be top of mind for a lot of people. The other area that I feel like we've only scratched the surface of is in personalization and hyper personalization of marketing. And this is again, like kind of an age old question of like how personal is too personal and how are brands going to toe the line between being intrusive or actually resonating with a person in the moment that they are ready to buy something and actually want the personalized recommendation. Like, we know this about you. Therefore, the model was able to populate like this version of the creative that best suits all these data points that we have on you. So I think that's going to be a tough line for brands to walk appropriately and figure out how to do personalization well and in a way that resonates.
Yes. There's clearly a ton of use cases that are hitting the market: decision-making, personalization, creative, search. It's great to hear both of your perspectives on how that is really transforming our daily lives. As marketers, it can be really difficult to keep up with all of the change that is happening right now in this space. Before I let you both go, thank you again. It's been a lovely discussion, but I definitely want to know where you're getting your news, if there's a single resource or an influencer in the space that you really trust and that keeps you kind of abreast of all of the happenings around technology and marketing.
It's tough for me to actually narrow it down to a single source because I think things are changing so fast. I find that there's so many different viewpoints, and every day the tone and the vibe changes a little bit, or what people are calling out as sort of positives or negatives and benefits and detractions of AI on society. A lot of that I get through LinkedIn. And at this point, there's not just one or two that I follow, but more just kind of looking at what people bring to the surface as innovative, creative, and how people are experimenting with different tools and technologies. And then I think Alistair mentioned ANA, Association of National Advertisers. They've put out some really good studies, and some of their events have been really helpful to us internally. Otherwise, I would say like my biggest source of just inspiration on AI comes from just experimenting with the tools myself, all of the search capabilities alongside some of the creative asset generation tools like Pencil we talked about, and DO2 and some of Google's offerings as well, has been just a fun journey as a consumer, but also as someone who works in the space. Even I think the new Playground app on the latest iOS rollout a few weeks ago has been fun to mess around with, to get a sense of how different platforms are integrating AI for that kind of more creative side of things.
Yeah, I 100% agree that just like playing around with stuff is a constant source of inspiration. But the only thing that I can think of using my own personal LoRa for is like, can I insert myself into various scenes from Legend of Zelda games? The answer is yes, and it's fun. I love playing around with it, and I think that's a great way to, even if you don't understand the underlying technology, is understanding the use cases and then trying to think about how you could scale that into your sort of professional life or whatever else it is. I'll give 2 plugs to people that I always enjoy hearing from. One is David Jones, who's the founder of Brentech Group. I see him probably deliver his GenAI keynote on a nearly monthly basis, and every month it develops. He's so on top of what's going on in the industry. And for anybody listening, if there's an opportunity to hear him speak, it's well worth hearing him. He's truly a leader in this space. And there's somebody who I work with called Dave Porter, who does sort of daily demos internally for us within Oliver, all just about like super simple things, like just how to use the sandbox tools that we've got, how to get the best results out of things, shortcuts, ways of embedding it in your daily life. ANA is also a fantastic resource. They're actually hosting the ANA AI and MarTech conference in Austin, which I'm going to go to, and I'm really excited about hearing from all the different speakers there, talking to all of the different vendors and partners and people that are going to be there. So those would be my takes on that one.
Great picks. Great picks. Well, that's all we have for today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to Databreak anywhere you like to get your podcasts. Before we go, Alistair, do you want to give another quick plug about where our listeners could find out more about Oliver and any highlights you might want to share regarding the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah. You can find us at www.oliver.agency. You can find us on LinkedIn. We're under Oliver Agency. Full name's Oliver. So you can find us there. You can find me on LinkedIn, Alistair Vines. Also super happy to connect with anybody.
And you can find insights from Christy Ray and other 55ers on our LinkedIn and our blog titled The Tea House, which offers a place to learn, ask questions, and browse the latest MarTech insights from our 55ers. Until our next data break, stay curious, stay data-driven, and continue exploring the world of marketing and data analytics.